Hi, welcome to my channel. It's Tammy Brown Rodriguez. I go by TBR for short. So today's a follow-up, and basically what we're going to talk about today is going to be going over the early vote elections here in Dallas County, some of the dynamics that we've seen here, and we're going to go into what to look for on November 5th for Election Day. And the other thing that I think might be helpful is to share with you a little bit about my experience and why I do what I'm doing. So back in 2018, my husband and I were contacted and asked to go down to Central Count here in Dallas County. And Central Count is where all the ballots and the jump drives from the elections go to in order to be counted, hence the name Central Count. We go down in 2018, and I'm telling you, the things we saw, we could not believe. I could not believe some of the discrepancies and the dynamics that were happening. In fact, when we were there, we had issues such as when they are adjudicating the mail-in ballots, you have a Democrat and a Republican, and they're reviewing the ballot, and they're recreating and they're transferring what that voter voted on onto a separate ballot that can be run through the machines to be tabulated. Well, as they're trying to figure out the voter's intent, there's times when they change that ballot. That gave me alarm initially because I didn't know what I was looking for. And that's actually their job, is to identify the voter's intent. Once those ballots are recreated, they put them in a box, they put a number in the box, and then they strap that box up, lock it up with a zip tie, and they send it upstairs. Gets upstairs, another team clips that zip tie, takes the lid off that box, and they take those ballots that were recreated and they're run through the tabulator. Half the time, if not more than half the time, those numbers didn't jive. The number on the box did not match the number that went through the tabulator. As brand new to poll watching, I asked the presiding judge if that was an issue. Shouldn't somebody do something about it? And he just kind of looked at me and said, "Oh no, well, we just have to use what we have." Well, that is in direct violation of the Texas election code. If these two numbers aren't jiving, shouldn't we figure out why? So that was like the number one alarm. The number two alarm was when the people that were working in that office were bringing in a separate laptop, their private laptop, and they were connecting their laptop to the central accumulator, like the big computer that tabulates everything. Again, I'm shocked. I step out and I call the Secretary of the State, explain what I saw to make sure that it's not a violation, and in fact it is, because you're not supposed to have personal computers in there. You're not supposed to attach anything to the accumulator. And in fact, an inspector was sent down from the Secretary of State's office back in 2018. So as I became more seasoned and spent more time at Central Count, I realized that we have a problem. And so back in 2018, I started talking about it. I started talking to anybody who would listen. And in fact, I spoke so loudly that at the time, the chair of our local party asked me to run for city council. She wanted me to step in, lean in, and become more engaged in my community. I did. I lost that election, so which I'm pretty grateful for, because what was most important to me was to identify the problems and help with the solutions, right? I believe I'm a solutionarian. I want to see things improve and get better, not just complain about it. So since 2018, I have been heavily involved in local politics and policies and my community. So it's a civic responsibility for me, and not just to complain about it, but to identify the issues and then know who to escalate that issue up to bring real change. And is that an activist? I don't know the real explanation. But I do know that nothing will change if we don't step up and do something about it. Now, during that time, was I ridiculed? Absolutely. Those of you that have watched a couple of my videos have already probably figured out I tend to lean a little more conservative. And so because of that, I had to select a party, right? We have a bipartisan government in the United States, so you've Republicans and Democrats. My moral convictions, my faith, really lends itself to the conservative movement. So that's who I've aligned myself with. But trust me when I say, if there's a candidate who has a better platform, their policies are for small government, or if they're caring for the most compassionate, the vulnerable communities, I would vote for a candidate purely based on policies, not just on party. Now, I only say that for those of you who complained about, well, of course she's Republican, she's talking about election issues. Folks, I'm talking about election issues because that is an American issue. That is a citizen issue. That is something that every single one of us should be concerned about. Do you know what our forefathers did to ensure that we had a constitutional republic, that we had the ability to cast our vote for who we believe to be the most qualified, that we don't have kings and queens, but we have elected officials who represent the people, the will of the people? That is a precious commodity. And if you knew something was broken and you didn't stand up to try to fix it, what are we doing? We might as well just get in line and let somebody else make all the decisions. Well, that's not who I am. And so when I saw a problem with the election process, I wanted to make a change. And the way you can initiate change, the way you can ensure that these problems don't continue to happen, is by getting involved in your local party, whether that's Democrat or Republican. I got involved in the Republican Party, and I've had the privilege and honor of training hundreds of precinct chairs, hundreds of election workers, hundreds of poll watchers. And so the information that I'm sharing and that I've shared on my previous videos isn't hearsay. It's not some conspiracy theory. It's actually boots on the ground, first person and second person reporting. Documentation beats conversation every day. So what are the issues we saw during the early votes? Folks, we've talked about it. We've watched where the wrong ballot style was issued to the voter. And when they got to that express vote to vote their ballot, they saw that it was the wrong candidates. Then they asked, hey, I'm supposed to have this candidate. We had one voter call in our rapid response hotline and say that the presiding judge told them, well, it's almost all of the candidates that you can vote for, just vote that. That's crazy. What do you mean it's almost right? So that voter opted not to vote because you can always spoil your ballot, which means you can say, you know what, something's going on that isn't right. I'm going to give you my ballot and I'm going to spoil my ballot. So that's something that as a voter, you want to make sure that the ballot that you're given when you put into that express vote is voted correctly. The second thing is when you touch that screen and it doesn't mark who you think it should mark, or if it marks the person that you initially selected first, but then by the time it's printed out, it's changed, that again is a concern. And this is for election workers and voters, guys. It's the same problem. So if you're a voter and that your ballot shifts, you want to make sure that you find the presiding judge and ask them to spoil that ballot, and you want to vote again. Because see, under the Texas election code, as a voter, if you didn't make the mistake, the machine made the mistake, you can re-vote that ballot. So you surrender the one, you ask them to initiate the second, and then you can go ahead and vote that ballot. The next thing to look for, folks, whether you're a clerk, a judge, or a voter, is the tabulator. On November 5th, those tabulators need to be working. So after the express vote prints your ballot that you voted, you walk into that tabulator, which is that large black thing at the door where you slip your ballot in. You want to make sure that that is functioning. If it's not functioning, most of the time it's because it's full, and it's the presiding election officer's job to contact the county to get those ballots picked up. If you see containers on the side, if you see a bag on the side where people are putting their voted ballots, I encourage you, have them spoil your ballot and come back later. because the chain of custody for the ballot is everything. We want this entire process to work well. We want to ensure that when you walk out of that voting center, you feel good about who you voted for, and you feel good that your vote matters and it counts. It's the most precious commodity that we have. So we will protect your votes the best that we can. We want to make sure with plenty of watchers, plenty of educated workers, that all runs well. This is critical for November 5th. So if you've not voted, go vote. If you're a worker, then you know what to look for. And most importantly, remember, your country is waiting for you. Thanks.